All right, Vice Mayor Ortiz, we're all set.
Great, thank you. Welcome everybody to the Burlingame City Council meeting of November 15th, 2021. We're calling the meeting to order at 7:01. And with that, we will move right along to the Pledge of Allegiance. I've asked our Assistant City Attorney to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Will do. Thank you.
Will be recognized. So, Mr. Spencer, please.
Absolutely. Thank you. Please stand if you're able and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I apologize, was my sound not work properly? With that, Madam City Clerk, and could we do the roll call? Megan, can you hear me?
Yes. Councilmember Beach?
Here.
Councilmember Coulson?
Here.
Councilmember Brownrigg?
Present.
Vice Mayor Ortiz?
Here.
And Mayor O'Brien is absent.
Okay, and bear with me just 2 seconds. I did have so we are now moving. We did not have a closed session, so we're moving on to upcoming events. And I have to look at 2 events from our library, which, by the way, was made the list again of the most beautiful libraries in the Bay Area. So congratulations on that. So let me, okay. We, on November 16th at 1 p.m. on Zoom, we have a special story time with the author of We Laugh Alike, Juntos Nos Reímos, Carmen T. Bernier Grand. And so with that, we have our holiday ceremony and parade, November 4th. Sue, that I have, colleagues, anybody else have any, you guys can either not hear me or there's no upcoming events. Good, okay, so I will, with that, we move on to presentations. We are doing the presentation to our veterans, and I have 4 veterans, correct, Megan? That we're doing presentations for?
I believe so. I can bring up their certificates so that we can show
Very
them.
good. So I can start, and I hope we have them on Zoom. Do we have them all on Zoom?
I'm not sure that we do. I don't think I see the first person.
So I'll start with my neighbor down the street, Mr. Anthony Bruno, who served in the U.S. Navy 1949 to 1951. So, Mr. Bruno, do you happen to be on Zoom with us?
Vice Mayor, you might want to stop your video.
Don't see that, so we will move on. Then we also, it's really that bad. All right, let me stop my video. Back to number 1 with Anthony Bruno, who was, back to Mr. Bruno, just say, but people didn't hear. Back to Anthony Bruno, who served in the U.S. Navy from 1949 to 19. Doesn't sound like Mr. Bruno is on the line. So I will move on to Dr. Danglad, who was Navy from 92 to 1999. And I don't know if Dr. Glad is on the line. We'd love to see you, to recognize you. I don't see. So we're to Mr. Travis Smith, who was in the U.S. Pardon?
I don't believe he is on the line, Vice Mayor.
Very good. Thank you. So we'll move on to Travis Smith, who was in the Air Force. Is Mr. Smith on the line? No. And then finally, we have our own Mr. Scott Span, UAG Corps from 2014 to 2000 is in the reserves, 2000. And thank you for the Pledge of Allegiance. You nailed it. So that's for your service, all we really appreciate it, and glad to recognize you. We're a few days late after Veterans Day, and I'd also like to remind everybody that we have our own council member, Emily Beach, who is one of our veterans. So thank you all for everything. And we will move on to our next presentation by the Youth Advisory Committee. And I don't have a lot of information on that one, so I'm going to have to let Ms. Margaret Glomstead take it over from here.
Yep, and we have Supervisor Vega that needs to be brought forward, and then Ethan Wang, Dylan Argualdo, Ashley Fong, Maddie Gillette. And then Shireen. I see a Shireen on there too. While we're getting the rest of them in, Supervisor Vega is going to take us away.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Good evening, City Council. Thank you for having us. My name is Claudia Vega, and I am a recreation supervisor for the City of Burlingame. There are a lot of great things happening in our department right now, one of which is our new Youth Advisory Committee for the 21-22 school year. We have a great group of young people that are excited and committed to having an impact on the Burlingame community. And they are here this evening to introduce themselves and share some of the good work they have planned.
Hi, my name is Ethan. I'm a junior at Burlingame High School.
Hi, my name's Ashley. I'm a sophomore at Burlingame High School.
Hi, I'm Maddie. I'm a senior at Burlingame High School. I'm going to share a presentation now.
So we're here as the Burlingame Youth Advisory Committee, which is made up of a selected group of 13 high school and middle school students. We all live or go to school here in Burlingame, and we believe we are taking the necessary steps to improve the quality of life for Burlingame teens and the community at large. As the year continues, we hope to include the Youth Advisory Board, also known as YAB, in our meetings and events, which is essentially a subcommittee designed to include teens who are not selected for YAC. This year, we had an overwhelming number of 13 applicants and only 9 open positions, so YAB's a wonderful way to keep those teens engaged. And in our most recent YAC meeting on November 9th, YAB was invited to join the first half of the meeting to feel included in the decisions made by the committee. And throughout the year, we hope to include YAB in various activities and volunteer events.
Since this is our first meeting with you all, we'd like to share that our initiative moving forward is mental health. We feel that mental health is important to us and the community because it affects how we think, feel, and act. It also helps determine how we handle stress, relate to others, and make healthy choices. And as we were applying for YAC, there was a question that said, what is the biggest issue affecting teens today? And a recurring theme was mental health. So that's why we decided to go with it. Here are some quotes from the application. The first one is, many teens and youth alike struggle with mental health and finding safe places where there's support and understanding. Mental health should be taken seriously. This past year, I know that many people have talked about wanting to receive counseling services for stress, depression, and or anxiety, but didn't know how to take the first step. It's difficult for teens to carry the burden of a mental health concern and fear the price or accessibility of counseling services. I personally have friends and family who have struggled with mental health, and as a committee, we are aiming to provide a safe place for teens and adults to de-stress.
So we would like to share with you guys some events that we participated in and organized this year so far. So we want to start with our first event and most recent one. It just happened this past Saturday. It's called Therapy in the Park. This was our first event that was completely YAC organized and relating to our initiative of mental health. It was partnered with the SPCA, and they brought in mental health dogs for kids 12 and up to come and interact with the dogs, as well as mental health professionals and psychiatrists to give a free public outlet for mental health. Another activity we had during the event was making DIY cat toys that we donated to the SPCA to count as community service hours, as a way to, have an outreach to teens and give them an incentive to come more than getting mental health resources. We really wanted to market this event towards teens in the community because we've had trouble reaching them in the past. And a lot of our information that we got from our applications that Ethan was just talking about was relating to teen mental health specifically. So the way that we marketed this was through social media, the Burlingame High School weekly news broadcast, posters, the Burlingame Rec website, and Facebook. We think this event was a really good community building event and our good first jumping off point for events in the future. And hopefully we created a base of supporters that will come to our future events. Another event we had this year was Eggtober, which was continued from last year. It's our second year doing this event. It's where Yak packs and delivers bags of eggs, candy, and Halloween themed crafts to families that purchase them for their kids. We started this event last year as a way to mitigate the trick-or-treating that was put on hold because of COVID and social distancing reasons. And we think it was a really great way to involve younger kids in the community and combine it into a fundraiser for Yak. So this year we sold 67 bags, and it was our first kind of event this year. And we have a really positive response from families. We think this set a really good tradition for Yak that we hope to continue in the future and use the funds that we got from this year to go towards their puppies and also events that we're planning for the winter and spring. And the last event we want to talk about is the Muddy Mile, which was a Parks and Rec organized event, not Yak. But Yak and Yab attended the event, and we helped with check-in, welcoming, and cleanup, as well as supporting kids along the track. We found it to be a really good experience for Yak in terms of getting connected to an event that was larger than ourselves and making sure the community had enough resources to put on the event for the huge turnout that it had.
Are there any questions or recommendations for the Youth Advisory Committee?
Vice Mayor, you're muted on your phone.
Who'd you call on, Lisa?
Well, I was telling the Vice Mayor that he is muted, but I'll call on people. How about I call on Councilmember Beach?
Thank you, Madam City Manager. Just to tell the Yak team, just keep up the awesome work. What could be more important? I can't think of anything more important than teen mental health right now, but particularly as we're still in the middle of this pandemic. And bravo to the creative solution to get the Therapuppy in the park. Amazing. Just think it's such a creative thing. I don't think we've ever really seen that focus before on Yak. So keep up the great work. And thanks also for helping us with the Muddy Mile. That's just awesome. Thank you for your volunteerism and trying to help the community continue to get better.
Okay, can you guys hear me now?
Oh, perfect.
Oh, much better. Okay, how about Councilmember Brownrigg?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I just want to thank all of you guys on Yak for your leadership, especially in these times when the community is, staying at home and wondering how to participate, and you guys are out there helping everybody feel good. It's all part of a team effort to pull the community through. So thank you. I just really wanted to say thank you. And by the way, let us know if there's ever any way we can help. We all really respect what you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Coulson.
Echoing my colleagues to say thank you. Wonderful work. My only suggestion would maybe we consider a cuddly cat's day. Got to give equal opportunity, and diversity and inclusion is important. And cats are important, loving, wonderful mental health things as well. So thanks. But I love the puppies. It was great. And I know that a bunch of kids in my neighborhood were really excited to come down. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you all. You guys have done a great job. Thank you for the presentation. Really appreciate it. Thank you for being here. And thank you for all the work you do. And I'd like to echo what Councilmember Brownrigg said. Please reach out to us and let us know how we can help and involve us in some of your activities, because I think we all enjoy doing that. So thank you very much. And with that, we will move on to a presentation of a proclamation recognizing November 14th through November 20th, 2021 as United Against Hate Week. And with that, let me read the proclamation. Whereas United Against Hate Week, which was started by the mayor of Berkeley in 2017, is a call for 7 days of local civic action by people in every Bay Area community to stop the hate and the implicit biases that are a threat to the safety and civility of our neighborhoods, towns, and cities. And whereas the United States is a nation of immigrants whose strength comes from its diversity, and whereas the Constitution of the United States confers equality on all individuals, regardless of race, gender, orientation, religion, or political beliefs. And whereas the City of Burlingame City Council reaffirms the city's commitment to being a welcoming, inclusive, tolerant, and safe community for all. And whereas education, compassion, and cooperation are key to unlocking, understanding, and embracing differences between people. And whereas over the past 2 years, the city has participated in the United Against Hate Week with activities including special presentations, development of a flyer that listed contact information for helpful organizations and resources, as well as book recommendations, and a very successful community-wide potluck and candlelight vigil at the library. And whereas this year's planned activities thus far include a story time discussion for children and parents, an art and poetry slam for teens, and a facilitated discussion of the art of calling in, dismantling racism, not relationships. And whereas the City of Burlingame joins other communities across the state in recognizing United Against Hate Week as an important step in bridging divisions as well as strengthening our communities. Now, therefore, I, Ann O'Brien Keegan, Mayor of the City of Burlingame, do hereby recognize November 14th through November 20th as United Against Hate Week. So with that, thank you very much. Any comments from my colleagues? And Mr. McCulley, did you have a comment?
Well, I'm just here, thank you, Vice Mayor and Council. I'm just here to accept the proclamation on behalf of my staff and the community members who helped plan all these events. And also Claudia Vega, that was just here with Parks and Rec. She was on the team doing a lot of this work. So they put a lot of hard work into creating these events. They also meet, unlike a lot of, well, most cities in the Bay Area, they didn't stop this year. They didn't stop like they would normally do and just pick it up just before United Against Hate Week. They've been working the year round, meeting every other week to discuss these items and other issues that come up in the Bay Area. So they've worked really hard. They came up with 4 events, which most cities only have 1 or 2 events. So they've quadrupled what most cities do. And they've just done a really awesome job. So I just wanted to point that out. And thank you so much for the proclamation.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. McCauley, appreciate everything you do in the library to support this endeavor. So colleagues, anybody comments? And having none, then we will move on to public comment. So, Madam City Clerk, do we have any members of the public wishing to comment? And these are comments that are for items that are not on the agenda. If you have something that's on the agenda, we can wait till that item comes up. With that, Madam City Clerk, do we have any public comment?
Yes, we have Danielle, and I will allow her to talk at this time.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. My name is Danielle Lacampagna, and I'm with Citizens for a San Mateo County Gun Buyback. And I'm just joining tonight to thank you so much for your support this fundraising cycle and in 2018. Our group has raised the funds to give out during the buybacks. And while the sheriff assists in a few additional, our group assists in a few additional ways, the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office manages operations for the buybacks. And with the assistance from Belmont and Redwood City officers and support from San Carlos, there will be a buyback this December 11th on Saturday from 10 to 2 in San Carlos. And that's at 1000 Skyway Road, right off the freeway. Just wanted to announce that tonight and really appreciate your support again as a city. Want to make sure that people know about the buyback that's coming up. Please transport firearms unloaded and in the trunk of your vehicle. $100 will be given out for handguns, shotguns, and rifles, and $200 for assault weapons. We look forward to seeing any residents that would like to attend, and please spread the word. A few weeks ago, our group has passed on a postcard and a flyer for the event, so hopefully your city is promoting it on some other avenue as well. And we hope to see anyone who has any unwanted guns to surrender on that day on December 11th. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We also have Greg, and I will unmute him now.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yep. I live on a small street called Winchester Place, and the home next door has been converted into an illegal short-term rental. As far as we know, this is not allowed here unless the owner is a primary resident. And there's been some very problematic short-term tenants. I was wondering if you guys could just address any recourse we have and how we might go about remedying the situation. And that's all I really have to say. I guess it's more of a question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment, Greg. Unfortunately, we are not allowed to comment on items that are not on the agenda. So I do believe there's been a number of emails that have come through. So I believe there will, if there hasn't already been a response, there will be a response. So with that, Megan, any others?
We did get one email in from Sandra Lang, and she says, "Good evening, honorable city council members. Thank you for this opportunity to address the city redistricting process. The weight given to data gathered from defining communities of interest, current map drawing exercise should be clarified. How are the events eventually determined? Residents at the first public hearing voiced many interests specifically and generally. Granted, we were presented with demographic population data. However, oftentimes issue areas don't always match certain demographics, and often issues influence how people express their community of interest. It would be helpful for the consultants to explain what issues characterize the perspective maps submitted to date."
Great. And once again, we are not able to answer. Of course, I wish I could, but actually, if you could email, actually, the city clerk could probably have some good answers on that one, Ms. Megan. So with that, any other public comment that is not on the agenda? Councilmember Brownrigg?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. And of course, we can't discuss substantive issues that aren't on the agenda. But apropos of the earlier comment about Winchester, I mean, and just to elaborate, our director of community planning, Kevin Gardner, has been in touch with neighbors. And so the gentleman can check with neighbors and can certainly check in with our staff. I just wanted to give him that extra color, that there's been to elaborate your point, that there's been a fair amount of dialogue and explanation. Hopefully neighbors can share.
Thank you. Okay. Madam City Clerk, do we have any other public comment?
We do not, Vice Mayor.
Thank you very much. And with that, then we will move on to our consent calendar. And colleagues, does anybody wish to pull any items? Having none, Michael, Councilmember Brownrigg.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. So I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar. I'd like to make one comment, which is that one of the items concerns the fees. And I think this is a really important issue broadly that I look forward to, diving into next year, which I think we should take a look holistically. But it's just by way of saying it's an important issue, and it's a very good staff report that sort of gives a snapshot of where we are. But that's just a comment. And with that, I would make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Okay. Hold that thought for just a moment. I'm going to open it to members of the public. See if there's any members of the public who would wish to pull any of the items. Madam City Clerk?
I didn't receive any, but there is Christopher with his hand up, so I will allow him to talk to tell us which item from the consent calendar he would like to pull.
Okay.
Christopher?
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I may have missed the opportunity to comment on the sewer rate changes.
We're not there yet, so that's.
No, that's actually
Oh, thank
further
you.
along in the agenda. So if you want to hold your comment till then, we'd be happy to hear you then.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, so back to the consent calendar. Is there any member of the public wishing to pull a consent item? And having none, we will go back to Councilmember Brownrigg. You finish your thoughts, sir?
Just to make a motion to approve the consent calendar as is.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Brownrigg and a second by Councilmember Beach. Madam City Clerk, if we could have a roll call.
Councilmember Beach?
Yes.
Councilmember Coulson?
Yes.
Councilmember Brownrigg?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ortiz?
Yes. And with that, we will move on to item number 9A, adoption of a resolution establishing sewer rates for calendar years 2022, 23, and 24. And I believe that is Mr. Syed Mertouza, our Director of Public Works.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Ortiz and council members. Good evening. So the item before you is to hold a public hearing regarding the proposed sewer rate increases and determine if there is a majority protest. And if there is no majority protest, adopt the attached resolution establishing the proposed sewer rates for the calendar years 2022, 2023, and 2024. The city has sent out Proposition 218 public hearing notices to all ratepayers 45 days in advance of the public hearing as required by law. There are, just for council information, there are 8,201 sewer ratepayers in the city. It would take 4,102 number of protests from the ratepayers to make a majority protest. Based on my discussions with the city clerk earlier today, we have received a total of 9 protests thus far, which she will confirm at the close of the public hearing before council deliberations tonight. Alex Handler, principal of Bartle Wells Associates, who performed the sewer rate study, will be providing a brief presentation to the council. But before that, I would provide some background for the city council and the public. The Sewer Enterprise Fund provides funding to operate and maintain the sanitary sewer system and the wastewater treatment plant. And it also provides funding for the capital improvement program for the systems. The sewer system in Burlingame consists of approximately just about 100 miles of pipelines, 7 pump stations, and a wastewater treatment plant facility. Many of the city's pipelines are approximately 70 to 100 years old, and the treatment plant facility is just approximately 80 years old. And they have served their intended useful life beyond their intended useful life. Although city has been proactively replacing this aging infrastructure for more than a decade on a robust basis, there's still a substantial backlog. The city has just completed a master plan, which has identified $137 million worth of backlog of work through 2040. In order to address this backlog, the city needs to continue to do the capital improvements to make sure the system meets current standards and it's operating in compliance with the state and federal regulatory requirements for public health and safety. The city has not had sewer rate increases in the past 9 years and is one of the lowest sewer rates in the Bay Area. And in order to address the backlog, the city council held a public study session on September 7th to discuss the sewer rates and then gave direction to city staff. So based on that city council direction on September 7th study session, staff is bringing before you a rate increase of 9% annually in 2022, 23, and 24. I will ask Alex Handler to go over the presentation, after which staff and the consultant will be available to answer any questions. Alex?
Thank you. Thank you. And we have a presentation here. Should I, am I supposed to put that up? Just checking. Okay, let me do, sorry, folks. Let me just get that up here. Okay, sorry. I'm sorry to bear with me for 1 second. I'm sorry, folks.
Seems like it's a night for technical hiccups.
Yeah, it's my PowerPoint's restarting for some reason. I'm not sure why, so I apologize here.
Megan, can you run the PowerPoint? That's okay.
It'll take me a second because I need to download it from our website.
Let me see if I can.
I've got it here. What the?
Here we go. I have it. Alex, it's all up on the screen now for you.
No, that's great. And something weird happened on my side, right? I unfortunately can't see anything. So I've got it printed out. I'll go through it, and if I'll just mention when to change slides. So anyway, on the cover page, just real briefly, as Syed just said, this is a water and sewer rate presentation. The bottom line is no water rate increases are needed at this time. So that's why for tonight's council action, this is really just about the sewer rates. I'm not going to cover all the points on these slides, just give kind of a brief recap. I know there's some new folks probably watching from your community who weren't participating in the study session back in September. The next slide just gives a little background in our firm. I'm not going to go into this other than to say that I'm with Bartle Wells Associates. We're an independent public finance advisory firm. We specialize in utility rates and finance, and we've worked for many of your neighboring agencies and worked for Burlingame in the past too. On the next slide, the presentation overview. I'm just going to give a quick background and then kind of jump into the key findings. And with that, to the next slide, the background, the key point I just always like to make is that your water and sewer utilities are self-supporting enterprise funds. So they're kind of run as independent businesses, and your rates are the underlying source of repayment security that generates the most revenues. So really you need to set your rates at adequate levels to fund your future financing needs, because they supply the kind of the underlying financial stewardship for operating your system. In terms of rate history, you haven't had any water rate increases in the past couple of years, but it's really on the sewer side where there's been no rate increases for 9 years since 2012, where the rate increases are needed. And a final point just to make is that here in Burlingame, you have a single bill that goes out once every 2 months with a combined utility bill for water, sewer, and garbage. So it tends to be a higher bill that gets sent out less frequently. A lot of other agencies that have bills like this, I always hear complaints, people feel their bills are higher than neighboring agencies in the community. But then you look at the other neighboring agencies and they're only doing water or only sewer, they collect on the property tax rolls. If you go to the next slide, there's a survey of water and sewer rates. And this kind of represents a typical bill for a typical single family home. And you'll notice with the arrow pointing down there, Burlingame's rate for a typical home is on the lower side, the lower middle range, compared to many of the other agencies in San Mateo County. Your rates are heavily dependent on usage. So of course you have some folks who pay less if they use less and some who pay more. But overall your rates are significantly below the regional average. On the next slide are a couple of pie charts, just summarizing, in the big picture, what are your water and sewer rates paying for? On the left is on the water side. You'll notice it's about 30% of the expenses are for operating and maintenance costs for the city. On the bottom, the blue section, about 43% of your water costs go to purchasing wholesale water from SFPUC. And then in the orange and yellow sections on the left, that represents your debt service and capital. So that's all really being used for capital improvement funding. And again, I'll just mention, this is based on a 3-year average of projected expenses looking forward. Again, just to give a rough sense of where the funds are going. It changes a little bit from year to year. On the right-hand side of the page is the sewer. And again, the operating expenses for the city are about 30% of where customers' rates are funding. The city also has a contract treatment services provided by Veolia for the wastewater treatment plant. So that's run by a private company since I think 1972. The city's been in partnership with Veolia. So that's about 27% of the bill. And then on the yellow and orange sections are for capital improvements and debt service. And a question that I think was raised once in the past was, how come the capital and debt service is higher on the sewer side than the water side? And I think the reason is you've just got a lot more wastewater infrastructure, because in addition to your pipelines out there, you also have a wastewater treatment plant that's aging and in need of some significant investment in upcoming years. The key findings on the next slide, we've already mentioned, no water rate increases. However, you do need sewer rate increases. And also we updated the sewer rate structure. So the rate increases are going to be a little bit different for each customer class. So moving on to the next slide is sewer rates, which is the reason why we're here tonight. And the next slide shows a survey. This is just looking at the sewer rates only. And you can again see the arrow showing Burlingame's sewer service charge on a monthly basis for a typical single family home. You're one of the lowest in San Mateo right now, in San Mateo County. It doesn't surprise me since you haven't had any rate increases in many years. The way you bill your sewer customers on the residential side for single family homes and duplexes, it's based on a 3-year average of winter water use. So again, customers have a lot of control of the bill here in Burlingame. On the next slide, even though you haven't raised rates in a long time, that's part of the reason for the sewer rates. But the main driver for rate increases is sewer capital improvement needs. Like many agencies, you've got a lot of aging facilities, as Syed pointed out, a lot of pipelines that are 70 plus years old. You've got a treatment plant that's, the city's made investments over time, but things tend to wear out over time. And there's a number of other agencies on the peninsula that are in various stages of completely rebuilding their wastewater treatment plants just because they're approaching the end of their useful lives. So you've got a significant amount of, backlog of aging infrastructure that's needed. You've got a lot of funding needs. And I know over the years, city staff has been working with independent engineering consulting firms to try to really get a good sense of what those funding needs are. You had a wastewater treatment plant master plan about 5 years ago that looked at the treatment facilities. And this year there's been the focus on completing the sewer collection system master plan regarding all the pipelines and pump stations. And overall, as Syed mentioned, there's about 136 million over 20 years, and that's in current dollars. If you add in 3% cost inflation, you're looking at about 175 million. Over the first 5 years, the total is about 63 million with construction cost inflation, with about 34 million of that happening over the first 3 years. So that's really a significant higher level of funding than your current rates are able to support. So on the next slide, what we did is the sewer rate study is kind of two elements. One is we developed 10-year financial projections to evaluate rate increases and figure out where rates need to go to fund the cost of service. And the second thing is we also looked at the rate structure to make sure we're recommending rates for each customer class that are aligned with the cost of service. Now, in the big picture, what's being recommended is 9% overall rate increases. But due to the rate structure realignment, there's going to be a little bit different increases to each customer class. So overall, it's 9%, but each type of customer is going to see something a little bit different. And the only other thing I wanted to point out was that this is 9% on the sewer only, and your sewer bill is pretty low compared to other agencies in San Mateo County, and 0 on the water. So if you look at the impact on the combined water and sewer bill, it works out to be about a 4% overall increase. So on the next slide is where it shows the actual proposed sewer rates, and this was included in the notices that were sent out to all the property owners and customers. What we try to do is phase in the increase in equal dollar amounts over the next 3 years. Some years it might be 1 cent higher than another, but that was the goal, to try to be gradual. The way your single family and duplex rates work, just to remind folks, it's volumetric rates per 1,000 gallons based on a 3-year average of winter water use, and that's water use during a period between January and April. And that's when there's minimal outdoor irrigation. So it's meant to kind of reflect the indoor water use for your residential customers. And you'd see the rates would go from $12.25 per 1,000 gallons up to $16.25 per 1,000 gallons over the next 3 years. And below that, we've got the commercial rates. Again, these are volumetric rates per 1,000 gallons of metered water use. And all your rates are subject to a minimum charge, which equates to roughly using 1 unit of water at the single family rate. So it's one of the lowest minimum charges out there. One of the nice things, one of the bad things about volumetric rates is your revenues go up and down as changes in use occur with water use. And you've certainly been impacted in recent times with COVID, which has caused commercial use to go down quite substantially. But we're just assuming this is temporary and that use is going to rebound back to normal levels over the next few years. But for your commercial customers, that means those folks who have been impacted are going to be purchasing a lot less wastewater, and they're not going to continue to pay the same bills that they used to if their business is down. So they've only paying for actual usage. One thing I did want to point out on this chart, I keep mentioning, 9%, everyone's a little different. There is one group that's facing percentage-wise a substantially higher impact than the other groups, and that's the institutional rate for institutions, schools, and churches. I'll point out they're currently paying a rate that's $4.80 on the chart per 1,000 gallons, which is, a little more than a third of your light commercial rates. They're benefiting tremendously under the current rates, and under the proposed rates, their rates dollar-wise aren't going up that much more than some of the other groups, but percentage-wise, it's a lot more. But that's because we're trying to bring their rates in line with the cost of service. And if you look at the rates proposed for the last year, the rates for that group are still going to be, benefiting from the way you have your rate structure. They're quite a bit lower than the other commercial groups out there. So moving on to the next chart, it shows kind of a long-term impact of what's happened with residential sewer rates since the last sewer rate increase for single-family homes. And on the chart, we've got on the bottom kind of a low-use customer. In the middle is kind of an average, a typical single-family home. And on the top part of the chart, there's, showing what the bills are for someone who uses moderate to high level of water use or sewer use. So that's about the top 15% of your single-family bills. And, even though the rates are increasing the next 3 years, it's coming after a period which rates haven't increased in roughly 9 years. So if you kind of average it out, it works out to be the rates that are being, the bills that people are going to pay in a few years with full implementation of the rates are going to equal the bills they were paying in 2012, adjusted for about 2.4% per year. So inflation. However, in reality, people used to tend to use more water, and even in the wintertime than they do now. So for a lot of folks, the long-term impacts are even less than what I'm showing on this chart. And then on the next chart, again, it's the rate survey, but we added in what the proposed rates were for the first rate increase for January 1 of 2022. And still your rates are going to compare pretty favorably to other agencies out there. You'll be one of the lowest rates out there. Going forward, there's additional rate increases, not only in Burlingame, but there's a lot of other agencies around San Mateo County who are in the same shape, dealing with aging infrastructure, and a lot of them have already adopted multi-year rate increases or are anticipating more rate increases. So we're pretty confident your rates are going to stay among the lowest in the county. And finally, with rates is the next charge. We also updated the rates that are charged to new single-family homes and duplexes. And because residential single-family homes, duplexes are charged volumetric rates based on prior 3-year average winter water use, when you have a new customer join, there is no data, and it doesn't seem fair to charge them based on what the prior occupant of the home used to use. So the city has had a longstanding policy of having some fixed charges. They used to be based on, the number of people per home, but we've updated this to base it on the number of bedrooms. It's a lot easier for the city to apply, with the number of bedrooms working as a proxy for what the wastewater demand is for single family and homes and duplexes. So these charges are only charged temporarily until the first year data is available and the city updates its bills. So it's just temporary charges. Moving on to the next slide, the final slide, just wanted to summarize the rate increase process. So we've been working with city staff for quite a number of months, even going back to, I think we started the process in 2020, but really most of the work was done this year. And that led into a meeting with a joint meeting with the Public Works Committee and the Finance Committee back in August, which then we honed the recommendations and came back, met with City Council with a study session back in September, which led to the sending of the Prop 218 notices on September 30th is when they were mailed out. And today is the public hearing. And I know Syed already mentioned it, but your rate increases are subject to majority protest, meaning more than 50% of the affected parcels have to submit a written protest to technically stop council from considering the rate increase. It's rare that happens, and it sounds like you've only had a very minimal number of protests. So there doesn't appear to be a majority protest. And if these rates are adopted, the first rate increase would kick in on January 1 of 2022, and the additional rate increases on January 1 of the following 2 years. So that concludes what I was going to cover. I'll turn it back over to Syed and Council.
Council, we are happy to answer any questions.
Let me try that again. Colleagues, do we have any questions for staff? We did discuss this at length in our study session. So with that, then I'll ask the city clerk to read the title of the ordinance.
Mr. Vice Mayor, before the council deliberates, I'd recommend that you open the public hearing and take any public comment to allow for if there are any protest votes, then folks have until the end of the public hearing to lodge those protests.
Great. I got my order mixed up. So with that, then we will open up the public comment.
I didn't receive.
Again, I know we have at least one.
We have Christopher. So Christopher, I'm going to unmute you now.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I guess I'm in the minority here, but I just want to make a couple of comments and then you guys can move on, of course. But it just seems some sorts of the presentation that were presented to the public that referenced the water and sewer rates, just really isolating the sewer charges as separate, don't actually clearly present the total cost to ratepayers. I know why it's done in this way, but because it's all volumetric based measurements, it seems that it would be better to allow consumers to really understand their total costs and see what they can control. Since they're controlling their usage, they should be charged a rate that can be split up, but maybe combined in a way that they can see what their total water and sewer rates should be. So that's just more of a comment. And I think a couple of times it was mentioned in the public, what was presented to the public, in terms of the material that was forwarded, and also this happened, I think, in prior years as well, but the material that was presented on the sewer rate increases are, mentioned that there's no water rate increases, but of course we just had water rate increases in prior years, 2017, 2018, 2019. This is on the Burlingame website, but it's not made clear to the public when we're saying that we haven't had water rate increases, or this doesn't involve water rate increases, because we've already just undergone water rate increases. Thirdly, I think, the rate increase of 9% annually, of course, that seems accurate, but, really should consider or present the total rate increase over the 3 years, because this is compounded 9%, right? Every year it's 9% on 1 year and 9% on the next year, which is already increased rate. So overall, a resident is receiving a 33% increase over 3 years. And I think that, making that rate increase clear to the public would be a little bit more transparent. And then, on that same point, what's going to happen? What's the visibility? What's happening after those 3 years, right? So are we holding rates constant for 10 years? We're using 10 years as a look back period, but what's the forward looking period about what rates will happen after those 3 years? So it's really quite a narrow point of time that you're looking to comment on a rate increase without understanding what's going to happen in the future, what's being considered after 2024. And then with only 9 comments in opposition, not including myself, of course, but I think, I would argue that the public has not had the appropriate opportunity to respond. Maybe there should be an easier way for them to present a survey, a link that in the future that they can actually provide you real comments back, so you can take their commentary into consideration. Maybe there wouldn't be much more, but I think, if you're only getting 9 responses back, it's probably not the best form, for receiving responses. And then the last comment, I'll just, to save you time here, just, the wastewater treatment plant seems to be a shared infrastructure in some way. It looked like it partially served 2 other cities. Perhaps it might be worth considering, being that these are substantial capital costs that. Sorry.
3 minutes. So if you
sorry.
wrap it up.
I'll wrap it up. Yeah. So just last point, just to say, if the capital costs last for 50 years or more, that, our current infrastructure is over 78 to 100 years, we should really come up with a 20 to 30 year master plan, and then and really to allow you the best information to make a decision going forward, so that you're not just looking at a 3-year rate increase, but also planning for the next 15 years of what the impact will be to residents in the city and infrastructure overall. So thanks again for the comments. I'll turn it back to you guys.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Do we want to respond to any of the, I do always find that average of 3 winter months to be a very interesting way to measure it. And it really does not have anything to do with how much water I spend. So I think that's a good point. I don't know, is that a common way to do it overall, or it is? Okay, so it's not something that we're unique to that. Could you comment on that?
Yeah, let me, the reason for using this, the water consumption during winter is that water essentially is not going for outdoor landscaping or anything. It's primarily going into the sewer system. It's a dishwasher, it's your laundry, it's your showers. That's the primary. The outdoor water is almost next to nothing used. So that's the general purpose. It is the best measure outside of actually putting flow meters at every residence. So that's what it is. And that's the industry standard for that.
Very good. Yeah, I appreciate that explanation. That makes a lot of sense. Colleagues, I'm sorry, Madam City Clerk, do we have any other members of the public?
We do. We have Laura Hines with her hand up, so I'm going to allow her to speak.
Please, thank you.
Yes, thank you. I agree with some of the previous comments. I would like us to have more than a 4-year vision of how high the bills are going up. I know my dad is retired. He lives on a fixed income. We try not to ever water our lawns because the bill is so high as it is. And I think that seniors in the community surely must be worried about their water bills going up. And I just wish we knew, had a little bit more gradual increase. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I don't know if we want to comment on the capital improvement plan.
Yeah, I would like to mention that the city actually prepares a 10-year, we have a 20+ year master plan. Actually, it's actually 25, 30-year master plan. But what we look at it is that we looked at in segments. We look at the plans, the master plans, the longer they go, the more uncertain or vague they are. They're general, they're conceptual. So we look at the 5-year plan, generally speaking, and they're more concrete, they're more specific, the costs are much more nailed down. Increasing 5-year rates is a big deal. Council could choose to adopt a 5-year rate increases. That can be done. However, the idea of proposing a 3-year rate increase is that it allows the city to go back again to reevaluate whether rates are needed or not. It gives more flexibility to the city. For example, last time we increased the rates was 9 years ago for sewer. And we thought that was 3-year rate increases that were concluded in 2012. The idea back then was to reevaluate the rate 3 years from then. But due to a number of factors, competitive bidding results for CIP projects, pipeline repair projects, and also contracting with the outside contractor Veolia that kept our operating and maintaining costs, which are very low. All of those factors resulted in us holding off doing the rate increases. So what we thought, we would evaluate after 3 years. We did evaluate after 3 years, and then we carried those rates, those rate increases until now. And now we realize that we do need to increase the rate. So when you look at all the other cities, their rates, sewer rates, when compared to Burlingame, it speaks volume.
You went on mute. Mr. Mertuzza, you are on mute for some reason.
I'm sorry about that. So I was going to say that the city's current sewer rates compared to the other cities' sewer rates speaks volume for in terms of how the city has managed the finances and infrastructure, both capital and operation and maintenance. We did not do sewer rate increases for 9 years. It's very rare that happens.
Thank you, Mr. Mertuzza. And I really did want that to come out because I didn't want the question to just sit there and the assumption be that we do not have that long-term plan. So I appreciate that. And I hope that members of the public can feel comforted. Madam City Clerk, do we have any other public comment?
We do not.
Okay, Mr. Brownrigg or Councilmember Brownrigg.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I want to thank both Mr. Wenish for his longer comments and just assure you that we all think hard about this. When we raise rates, we all wind up paying those rates. And I want to underline what our Director of Public Works said. The fact that we are on the lower third of cities isn't because we've gone cheap on the infrastructure. It's because we've managed our infrastructure so well. And politically, it's super popular not to raise rates, which is one reason we probably haven't for 8 or 9 years. But then you wind up having to do catch up, which is what we're doing right now. So it is a huge bite to tell somebody, rates are going to go up 1/3 in the next 3 years. looking backwards, should we have done 3% a year every year? Maybe so. I mean, I think that's a very fair question. It's not the case, though, that we don't scrupulously watch every penny that we invest. So I just kind of wanted to share those two thoughts and really appreciate Mr. Wenish for being here and sharing his concerns. And then finally, I'd like to leave with a long-standing concern of mine, which is billing every 2 months. And I'd like to suggest at some point we revisit this question, because I think this throws off a lot of people's, first of all, I think, to be honest, having big bills come every 2 months as opposed to a smaller bill every month is actually harder for people on fixed income to manage. And so I'm not sure what the logic for doing it every 2 months is, but I think it creates a lot of grief. So we don't need to discuss that now, but I'd like to discuss it in the future.
Thank you, Councilmember Roundrig. I see Councilmember, I'm going to do this, let the city attorney has a comment, please.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I would recommend that before the council proceeds with any deliberation, that if the council is ready to close the public hearing, that if you could confirm that the public hearing is closed, because that's important for the Prop 218 hearing.
Very good. I appreciate it. And I just thought it was a response to one of the comments. So yes, with that, Megan, Madam City Clerk, we don't have any further public comments.
Correct.
And with that, then we will close the public comment, and we will ask the City Clerk to read the title of the ordinance.
There's actually no ordinance for this one, Vice Mayor Ortiz, but I can tell you that by the end of the day, we received 9 protests, and we have heard from 2 individuals. So if we include those, we've had 11 total protests.
Oh, pardon me.
Which does
Pardon
not
me. Thank you. Yes.
a majority.
See? Okay. Well, thank you for that. And then we will now I'll bring it to Councilmember Coulson. You had some comments?
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor Ortiz. So I do also agree with Councilman Brownrigg's assessment and appreciation for the public to come into our meetings and take the time to study these issues and provide feedback. I sort of zeroed in on the comment around public transparency, which I think we all really strive for. And so I might ask City Manager Goldman or Director Mertuzza, exactly, other than our agenda, how do we get the public and allow the public to know, and could we do it better? Could we include it in our newsletters? Do we do social media? So any way that we can make sure the public is aware of this. I also support the comment about the 2 months spreading and working on that. I do think it's lumpy, and that people get their bill and they always think their bills are double every other city's because they're comparing their 2-month bill. And even when you say to them, it's 2 months, they forget, they don't remember. So it creates an inconsistency when neighbors are talking. It's not an apples to apples comparison. And I also do appreciate that for almost 9 years, the previous council didn't raise the rates. And I don't really want to build in just an automatic like CPI adjustment, because I don't think we should raise it if our staff's efficacy and their, it's sort of a double-edged sword. Director Mertuzza, you're doing great work. You don't have to raise rates. And then when you do, and we raise them, a significant amount on a very low base too. That's the other thing I think people never really look at is they're hearing 9% or, 3% or whatever, but it's the dollar amount. These are very small, dollar amounts. And I think this is one of the most valuable services that you get when you consider the cost for water treatment and water disposal and, all the regulations that we have to comply with in terms of making sure we don't get sued, which would cost us a lot of money, you know. So I personally really want to make sure we invest, but I'd be open to a few of these other comments. Thanks so much for the work.
Thank you. Thank you. Councilmember Beach.
Thanks. No, I appreciate the presentation and colleagues' questions and comments. Actually, Director Martuzza, we had a discussion in one of the study sessions, but I want to make sure conceptually, because I think one of the public comments was reasonable. They're trying to figure out like the rates per 1,000 gallons versus what it means to the average single family home or the average ratepayer. And I have in my mind that it ends up being, maybe there's a question for Mr. Hamler's, like about $4.50 increase for the average single family home. Is that about right? And because I think that just sort of quantifies the dollar amount we're talking about, because this is just sewer rate, not water rate increase.
That is, I think that is, I believe that is correct. Alex, can you confirm that the average ratepayer would pay about $4.52?
I think it's a little bit more on a monthly basis, because if you look at the rates going up about $1.33 per 1,000 gallons, and if the typical, single family home residential is about 4.1, so it's a little over $5.
Okay, so it's about $4 or $5 is what it amounts to.
$5 a month for each year for
Right.
3 years.
Right. So 12 months times 5, about $60 a year. It goes up for the next 3 years. So I think that's what we're talking about. When I look at that, I haven't raised the rates in 9 years. I would much rather pay, $60 more. That's good value for making sure our sewers aren't exploding and things are working properly, and we're making those investments in our wastewater treatment plant. We've got to do these investments. It's the right thing to do. We haven't raised rates in 9 years. And it comforts me when I look at, even with our sewer rate increase, water is staying the same, sewer rate increase, the only 2 cities that are lower cost are Daly City and East Palo Alto in our county, and then Burlingame. So I think we're quite competitive, we're running efficiently, and we're doing the right investments. And this is going to make sure that for the next generation, we're going to have healthy sewer infrastructure. I think we've got to do it, and the majority of the city seems to not be protesting it as well. So I do support it, and I appreciate the work that's gone into being really thoughtful in the master planning and the thoughtfulness for how and why we raise these rates. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Beach. That was very well said, and I have to agree with just about everything you said. So thank you for that. Now, as far as the 2-month the 2-month billing, can we comment on that right now? Is that okay to do? I'm not getting myself in trouble here.
The item before you is obviously you can comment on that and then you can direct staff in the future as a separate item. It's a billing. It's not related to the rates itself, but it is a mechanism of billing. The city can consider different ways to bill that on a monthly basis. But just in order to give you an answer why the city bills bi-monthly, it's to reduce costs of mailing the bills to the customers. So they're all combined into one bill, and they're all sent every bi-monthly. So there's some savings that all those savings are essentially the ratepayers are benefiting from that saving. But we totally understand that it confuses the residents, ratepayers about these multiple bills, and it's hard for them to compare apples to apples compared to the neighboring jurisdiction. But if the council is interested in what it would take us to do that, we can work with finance department who manages the billing to see what future that would be a separate item for city council, separate discussion.
So I guess the proper thing to do would be to raise that when we propose any future agenda items. Unless our finance director, do you have a comment on that before we move on?
I just want to add on to Public Works Director Syed comments. And then it's not only just a billing process at additional cost, and also personnel cost, the staffing cost for the billing, and as well as for the meter to go around the city, the timing cost as well. So right now we're, several different city area when we go out to do the meter rate, all stuff. So it's will be at additional staff cost for sure. Yeah.
Great. So something for us to look at in the future is to see if the added cost warrants the change. So with that, Councilmember Brown, I go back to you.
Well, just to save us a step in the future, I mean, I think I see everyone's head nodding. So can we just take this as a decision that we should come back to this when staff is ready to have a review? Rather than proposing it under future agenda items. I mean, everyone.
Well, my thought is I would like to understand what the added cost would be before I want to move on to that. I think it makes sense to me to have it every 2 months if the savings is substantial.
Well, but Mr. Vice Mayor, if I may, I think for staff to do that analysis, they're effectively taking this issue on. I'll turn it over to the city manager, but it just seemed, go ahead.
Thank you, Councilmember Brownrigg. Just to keep this item clean and do what we need to do for this item, let's concentrate on this increase. And then when we get to future agenda items, if someone could just make that suggestion, if 2 of you say yes, which probably 4 of you will say yes, then we'll take it on and we'll do the analysis. But we just want to keep everything clean right now.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Are you looking for a motion, Mr. Mayor?
I'm looking for a motion, Mr. Councilmember Brownrigg.
It never pleases me to make a motion to raise rates, but this is absolutely the right thing to do, and therefore I make a motion to support raising the sewer rates as laid out in the staff report.
I'll second.
So we have a motion by Councilmember Brownrigg, second by Councilmember Coleman. Roll call, please, Madam City Clerk.
Councilmember Beach,
Yes.
Councilmember Coulson,
Yes.
Councilmember Brownrigg,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ortiz.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. And with that, we'll move on to item 9B, which is introduction of an ordinance providing a comprehensive update of Title 25 zoning of the Burlingame Municipal Code and an update of the City of Burlingame zoning map. And I believe I have Kevin Gardner, our Director of Community Development, as well as our City Attorney, Michael Giner. So I'll let the 2 of you take it.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Ortiz and members of the council. I just have a short presentation as we did discuss the zoning ordinance in our November 1st meeting. As mentioned in that meeting, the zoning ordinance is part of a larger effort that started with the general plan update. The general plan was adopted in 2019, and now we have the zoning code ready. The zoning code update includes a restructuring of the entire current zoning code, as Laura Stetson from MIG reviewed in the last meeting. And ideally, this new code will be easier for everyone to use, whether they be residents, builders, staff, commissioners, or council members. Since the City Council reviewed the draft code on November 1st, there have been 2 new sections added. First, a chapter providing a framework for developer indemnification, and second, a chapter establishing the procedures and requirements for processing development agreements. In addition, on Friday, a memo was sent to the City Council with suggested edits to section 25.12.050, which provides guidance for sea level rise performance. This was a late change, but arises from continued discussions we've had with staff from the Bay Conservation and Development Commission, or BCDC. We're wanting to align with BCDC's approach to the Bayfront and Development Review, and the suggested edits provide more specificity regarding BCDC's jurisdiction, as well as the dynamics between One Shoreline sea level rise infrastructure project and the BCDC review. We've also shared these proposed edits with the various developers that have been working on applications in the Bayfront, so that nobody is surprised. So given that there was a presentation in the November 1st meeting and there was council discussion, we're keeping the presentation tonight short, but are available for questions. With us tonight for questions are Laura Stetson from MIG, Len Matterman from One Shoreline, also Planning Manager Ruben Hurin, and City Attorneys Michael Gina and Scott Spansale. And with that, we're available for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gardner. I see Councilmember Coulson.
Thank you. Kevin, thank you for the modifications on the One Shoreline work and on that section you mentioned. So I just have a quick question, which is something I didn't realize, but that on some of the bayfront properties, it appears as though the property lines kind of go right up to the riprap, but then there's this odd situation where we have ownership that extends out into the bay with a different owner. So when we're setting these definitions along the shoreline, even if the owner of the property doesn't own that immediate small 6-10 foot part of the shoreline, the requirements and the setbacks still emanate from that spot, not from their actual property line. Is that correct?
That would be correct in that so the 100 feet is measured from the shoreline, and BCDC has a definition for the shoreline, and really the 100 feet is matching their jurisdictional boundary. So that's why it's important. We would not expect a property owner to do work. For example, if the shoreline was beyond their property line, we can't compel them to be doing work beyond their property line. But the 100-foot measurement would still be from the shoreline itself.
Okay, thank you. It's just an anomaly that I'm not sure if other cities have this, and I don't even know if it runs our whole bayfront or not, but it was a surprise to me. I mean, I knew it, but I had forgotten. So I was happy to figure that out. And that shouldn't cause any problems, I'm guessing.
No, and it is interesting that we have these underwater parcels. One of them is oddly within the jurisdiction of the city and county of San Francisco. So weirdly, Burlingame shares a border with San Francisco. Who would have guessed? It's just the way it works with these underwater parcels and jurisdictional lines. But in reviewing developments, we look within what's in the property lines. BCDC does have a mandate to look within, looking at the shoreline, but that should not be a problem for individual projects.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great. Colleagues, any other questions? Councilmember Beach?
No, well, actually, I do have a question, but again, huge thanks to staff for their incredible work on this and the shoreline updates and modifications as well. I dug into my questions surrounding community benefits when we do allow increased floor area ratio in different zoning districts. And I just want to applaud staff for really listening to us over the years. Not only do we add community benefits for, public plazas, open space, love seeing childcare facilities in there as part of the menu of options, even off-site infrastructure improvements, even contributions to our grade separations project is listed in here, net zero energy, net zero water, sea level rise, all this great infrastructure options on the menu that developers could do and then achieve some benefit to them. Two questions. Is there a mechanism in the ordinance as written, this isn't called out, but where a labor agreement could be considered a community benefit? And if so, where would that fit? Because that's probably a question for Mr. Gardner.
Yes, so where we do have the community benefits, it appears in a number of different sections depending on the zoning district. In each case, there's a menu of suggestions, but then there's also a catch-all at the end, which is called a flexible benefit. And let me just find the one. So for example, in the Bayfront, section 25.12.040, item 13 is what's flexible significant community benefit, and it's described as other currently undefined community benefits that is significant and substantially beyond normal requirements. And that's really the test, is it something that is substantially beyond what would ordinarily be required. And then in some other areas in the findings, we have some language that the benefit should be proportional to whatever increased development capacity is provided as well. So that's all kind of a consideration, but that flexible benefit is meant to capture things that we just hadn't thought of or are not in the list.
Okay, so eventually if we wanted to update and articulate that, that's one thing, but there's a mechanism in here under flexible community benefit. Thank you for explaining that. Is that the same thing also like for undergrounding of utilities? I know some are required, but if developers wanted to go above and beyond for undergrounding, would that be like either offsite infrastructure improvements or significant flexible community benefit. Okay.
Yeah,
think
yeah.
those
Again, the test is it significantly beyond what would ordinarily just be required? Then that could be considered a community benefit, and particularly if it is providing some kind of benefit that extends beyond the project itself. So some above and beyond infrastructure investment would qualify as such.
Great. I think those are things they've come up in different capacities, and just wanted to check in on that. And thank you for your work on this.
Thank you. So anyone else questions? And now remind me, now I open it to the public, or now are we doing the reading?
Now you asked me to read the title of the ordinance.
Megan or Madam City Clerk, would you please read the title of the ordinance?
Yeah. An ordinance of the City of Burlingame repealing and replacing Title 25, the zoning ordinance of the Burlingame Municipal Code, and repealing Title 21, Historic Preservation, and Title 22, Signs of the Burlingame Municipal Code. CEQA determination, no further CEQA analysis required pursuant to state CEQA guidelines, sections 15168, 15162, and 15183.
Thank you very much. And I will look for a motion to.
Is this the motion to waive further reading and introduce the ordinance? And that's what I.
Thank you, Mr. Brownrigg. Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a second. So we have a motion by Councilmember Brownrigg, second by Councilmember Coleman. Roll call, please, Madam City Clerk.
Councilmember Beach?
Yes.
Councilmember Coleman?
Yes.
Councilmember Brownrigg?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ortiz?
Yes. Okay, so now we can open it to the public comments, correct? Thank you, sir. And with that, Megan, do we have any public comment?
Yes, we have Jennifer Pfaff here, so I'm going to unmute her.
Hi, good evening. It's just a little edit I found that I've also sent to Kevin. I don't know if you got that, but it's a color edit. In the last between 2 weeks ago and now, just that little teeny tiny sliver of the Frankart Grove turned from green, which was correct, it's Parkland, to aqua, which is train, institutional, public. So I just want to make sure it gets switched back to the green. That's it.
Thank you. It's not fall colors, is it? Okay, thank you, Ms. Pfaff, for your comment, and we will take a look at that. So with that, Madam City Clerk, any further public comment?
Virginia with us, so let me unmute you.
Thank you.
Hi there, this is Virginia Calkins. I'm representing Divco West. We're a property owner along the Bayfront working alongside Woodstock, and mostly just want to thank the City Council, city staff, and One Shoreline for all of the collaboration and hard work that's gotten them to this point. It's really been a monumental effort to have sea level rise addressed in this way for the whole region and for the community of Burlingame. And so as property owners, we're excited to be contributing to the future and being a part of this important community benefit. So thank you all for all the hard work and looking forward to moving it forward.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Calkins. Do we have any others?
We do not.
Good. With that, we will close our public comment, and we will go back to my colleagues. Any comments, colleagues? Councilmember Beach.
No, I think it's been a really robust process and a long time coming. So I would just like to ask Mr. Vice Mayor, or perhaps the city attorney, would you like a motion to replace, to accept the updated zoning with the updated version of the One Shoreline, or are there any other specific language you'd like us to use?
Thank you. Oh, may
Go
I?
ahead, Mr. City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. In response to your question, Councilmember Beach, if the council is willing to accept the edits from One Shoreline, then what I would ask is, or recommend, is that the motion to adopt the introduction include incorporate the edits suggested by One Shoreline as the first reading.
And do we need to, Mr. Gardner, do we have any edit with that color comment from the public that needs to be mentioned as well, or is it, does staff need to look into that?
So that is a question for, I'm going to ask the city attorney. It's a land use designation or zoning designation. It's basically the tree grove that runs alongside the Caltrain tracks, which rightfully should be shown as open space, not rail corridor. I don't know if that counts as a substantive difference and such that if we make that correction, that's something that would require reintroduction, or if it's something we can fix as a cleanup.
So if the council is willing to make that change now and is clear about the section that they would like to have changed to the correct, to the park color, then that could be part of the motion tonight.
So Councilmember Beach, with that direction, would you like to compose a motion?
Sure.
And the motion is for the further reading and to bring it back for further reading and adoption.
That motion was voted on. This is to amend the text itself.
So make a motion to adopt the zoning and incorporate the One Shoreline edits and correct the land use designation and any other minor cleanup language that Director Gardner mentioned tonight. Really, I don't know if there's anything related to community benefits that you want to add, but the land use designation is the key one, and the One Shoreline modifications as well.
And bring it back for a second reading.
Sorry, and bring it back for a second reading.
So
Okay.
do we have a second?
I can second that.
Very good. So any comments, Councilmember Brownrigg?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. And I do appreciate the amendments. I think they'll tighten up the language and make it more clear. I would prefer to leave the community benefits language alone. I think it actually helps when there's flexibility in terms of future council's decision making. So I would not suggest trying to fiddle with that language, especially since there's not a clear alternative on the table.
And
I think
that the motion maker, and Councilwoman Beach, maybe you can clarify, but I think the motion maker did not include that in her motion, and in my second, I didn't include it. She said for future discussion.
Oh, if Director, my motion was if Director Gardner thought additional examples in community benefits, not requirements, just listed on the menu to clarify could be added. I support that. For those two that we discussed tonight. But if somebody else wants to make a substitute motion and take those clarifications out, that would be your prerogative. I think it's worth listing them. That undergrounding and labor agreements could be something that's part of the menu of options in those two categories that we discussed tonight.
So your motion would be at the discretion of the community development director to add those on?
Yes, if he thought they were worth adding. If we're going in and we're editing things here, then that would be my proposed motion, including the One Shoreline and including the color change that was brought up by the public comment.
Okay, so Councilmember Coulson, you comfortable with that for your second?
No, I would prefer not. I would prefer to leave the, so I guess I was unclear as to that. I'm glad Councilwoman Beach specified it. I agree with Councilman Brownrigg that I would just like to leave the language as it is with regard to community benefits and leave flexibility into the future. It sounds like the language allows for creative interpretation and discussion, and I think that is probably sufficient and best. So in
I
other words,
would tend to agree. I would agree with you on those points. And so at this point, we don't have a motion on the table since it was not seconded. And so at this point, would you want to make a motion, Councilmember Coulson?
well, I would like to offer Councilwoman Beach the opportunity to amend her motion if she would prefer. If she does not, then I'll go ahead and make a motion.
Since we don't have a second, then I will make the motion to adopt the ordinance to incorporate the edits of one shoreline and correct the land use designation color as suggested by the public, by the member of the public.
Okay, thank you. I can go ahead and second that motion.
Thank you for that. We have a motion by Councilmember Beach, second by Councilmember Coulson. Madam City Clerk, could you please give us a roll call?
Councilmember Beach,
Yes.
Councilmember Coulson,
Yes.
Councilmember Brownrigg,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Ortiz.
Yes. And with that, we move on to item number 10A, which is, but before I go, let me just, I really have to stop for a second and say thank you to staff. This has been a gigantic effort. What we did through all of this and getting to this point is just wonderful. And thank you all for your hard work, and thank you, colleagues, for everything that you've done. So I'm very happy to move on. Thank you. Item number 10A is an appointment to fill one vacancy in the Mosquito and Vector Control Board. So we have one seat, one candidate. So let's vote.
If you could just open it up for public comment, just in case.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Please, let's open it up to public comment. Any members of the public wishing to comment on the mosquito board appointment? Megan, anybody?
No. And then if you would like to text me your votes.
You guys still hear me? I'm good. Okay, I thought I hung up.
So Councilmember Beach, Gilligan, Councilmember Coulson, Gilligan, Councilmember Brownrigg, Gilligan, and Vice Mayor Ortiz, Gilligan.
Great, thank you very much, Megan and Ms. Gilligan. Congratulations on your appointment. And now we move on to item number 10B. We're going to appointment to fill one vacancy on the Traffic Safety and Parking Commission. We do have two candidates. With that, we're going to open it to public comment to see if there's anybody interested in commenting on this item.
There is none.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. With that, then we will text you our votes.
Councilmember Beach, Mr. Ng, is that right? NG? Okay, good. Councilmember Coulson, Mr. Ng, Councilmember Brownrigg, Mr. Ng, and Vice Mayor Ortiz, Mr. Ng.
Thank you very much. And congratulations, Mr. Ng, on your appointment. And thank you for coming back. You had been here before. And to all the other candidates, please don't forget us. We do have other appointments. We'd love to see you again. So thank you for that. And with that, we will move on to item number 11, Council Committees and Activities Reports and Announcements. Colleagues? I don't see anybody talking. So with this, let's try, hey, this is a good one. Future agenda items. Anybody have any ideas? And I'd like to propose that we consider changing our billing to monthly versus bi-monthly. So hopefully somebody will back me up on that one. Yeah.
I certainly do.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you,
would like
Mr.
to,
Councilmember.
I think, I mean, it would be great if we could just we'll have an analysis of the cost and then we can make a decision, right?
Right, exactly. Not prejudging.
We're not going to bring you back an action item. We'll bring you back a discussion item that has our analysis in it.
Perfect. Thank you. Everybody good? Any other future agenda items that would like to propose? Having none, then we have acknowledgements. And then we're going to adjournment. Does anybody have somebody that we want to adjourn in their memory? That's a good thing that we don't have anybody. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. And we will see you next time. Good night.
Well done, Mr. Vice Mayor. You got the rust off.
Little rusty there, but I'll figure it out. I have a month to catch up. Good night, guys.
Night.